conversation is about lupus, and this is a part of our Women's Health series. We want to open up the conversation more about women's health, specifically Black women. And I think this is a very good starting point because, in my experience, I see a lot of Black women that suffer from what doctors diagnose as lupus. And there's not a lot of talk, not a lot of conversation. The doctors aren't really saying too much. And I think that by talking amongst one another, we might be able to open up some doors for some clarity, some strength, some support, and even hopefully and possibly some solutions that we might be able to share. I think we all have our own, or at least you guys have your own solutions that you apply on a personal level that you might be able to share amongst one another. So I'm going to be asking questions in terms of facilitating the experience. If I ask anything that you feel like is sensitive or oversteps certain boundaries, please don't hesitate to let me know. Obviously, I'm going to be asking questions that may be somewhat sensitive. So if anything makes you feel uncomfortable, don't hesitate to let me know. We'll redirect the conversation. Just so you know, the conversation is being recorded as well. But hopefully, by the end of this, we can get some more clarity. You guys may be able to find some greater solutions. And I can tell you, my personal point of view is that when it comes to lupus and when it comes to various other diseases, contrary to what doctors may say, I don't think that any of this is something that we have to be stuck with for the rest of our lives. I think growing up as Black people and the struggles that we have had to deal with exclusively in this country has manifested themselves in a physical form. I think a lot of the illnesses that we deal with have a lot of metaphysical qualities to it, a lot of trauma associated with it, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that triggers these things that happen in our body. And I think it manifests in a physical form. And when we go to these doctors, I think a lot of these doctors are actually clueless. And I think some of these doctors actually know what's going on, but it's not their job to tell you. It's their job to treat you. It's their job to make money off of you. And that's just been my observation. So race, I guess we'll start with you. You want to briefly talk about some of your experiences with some of these doctors out here and where you stand at this point?
Okay, so when I first got diagnosed, it was 2005. And back then I was really clueless about what was happening in my body. So, I took the doctor's word as gospel. I just thought whatever they said was the truth, and I was to follow whatever they told me to do in order to get better. That was kind of my attitude back then. But now my attitude has shifted a lot because I've been through so much with this condition. I think now I feel more like when I go to see the doctor, I'm kind of more so just like going through the motions. I keep routine appointments, just so I can stay on top of my lab, like blood work and stuff like that, just to make sure, there's nothing crazy happening. But I don't have that same attitude anymore. Like when doctors talk to me, kind of just like, okay. And then I can go home and research and kind of figure out things that I can do on my own to help sustain my life. Because at this point, that's what it is. You know, um, yeah. I mean, I've been through a lot with this condition and a lot with doctors, so I feel like a lot of trust that I had in the beginning has decreased as far as the medical industry and doctors. That's just kind of like a general synopsis of what I've been through with doctors in the healthcare industry, that kind of thing.
You, with that said, do you think that doctors have been honest in regards to your condition, your experience?
I can't answer that for sure. I mean, I think doctors have been telling me what they've been trained to tell me. Now, whether on a personal level, each of these doctors, whether I feel like they're being honest or not, I can't answer that definitively. I don't know. But I think the doctors are still clueless in a lot of ways. And when you go visit them, they're just telling you what they know as far as their training.
So let me rephrase my question. Do you think that the medical industry is being honest in regards to your condition and your experiences?
Um, I would have to say no. Just on a general level, I would have to say no. Because after dealing with this for so many years, I just came to a point where in my mind it's like I don't believe that there's this condition that all these people suffer from, and they've been doing research for years and years. And when you ask a doctor, even still today, hey, where does this come from? The answer you get is like, well, we don't know. It's a mystery. So, it's something about that just doesn't sit right with me. And that's why the answer to that question for me is no. Just generally speaking, I don't think the medical industry has been honest about this condition. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so Ms. Crystal,
Yes.
let me throw the same question at you. Do you feel like the medical industry has been honest with you in regards to your condition and your experiences?
Yeah, I feel like I was fortunate or blessed to have I've had a couple of doctors throughout the years that treated this condition. And one of the first doctor that diagnosed it, he told me right from the very start that there was no cure. So that was honest. I thought that was honest. So from the very start, I never put my trust in the doctors for a cure. I knew that I was just being treated for the symptoms, flare ups, crisis. When I went into crisis, I knew that I wasn't, what this medication was not a cure all, and it was just to get rid of the symptoms and take me out of crisis mode. So, and the doctor that I had for over 10 years, he was the type of doctor that listened to me. When I he would ask me what was going on and he would listen to me. And when I would tell him that I wanted to wean myself off the medication, he would say, okay, we can do that. So he listened to me and he did what I asked to do, if it was reasonable. And I would wean myself off the medication when I thought I no longer needed it. And then if I went into a crisis later on, I would start taking it again. And that's how he treated me. He listened to me and how I wanted to treat it. So I was blessed with those two doctors.
So in rephrasing my question, so that's in regards to doctors. In regards to the medical industry on the whole, do you feel like the medical industry on the whole is honest about the condition surrounding lupus?
I feel as though the medical industry as a whole is designed to keep you on mission. That's what I feel. They're designed to treat the disease and treat it as a chronic disease that will never go away. So no, I don't believe that they're honest about that, because I believe that the patients can take more responsibility for their medical conditions. Some patients, I believe, they just feel as though I have this medication. This is all I have to do is take the medication. And I don't think they look at nutrition, look at spiritual aspects, emotional aspects, and environmental aspects as to being as contributing to their illness. So I just feel as though people sometimes use doctors as someone that they can put the responsibility on to cure or to make the disease bearable, instead of having faith that they don't have to live with disease forever, or taking the responsibility of trying to help themselves to cure the disease nutritionally and environmentally and spiritually and emotionally.
So the general answer in regards to the medical industry, based on you guys' experience, sounds like no, the medical industry isn't being completely honest in regards to your health. Am I
No, I
interpreting?
don't think so.
Okay.
No.
I wanna gain a little more insight. You used the word crisis, right? I haven't heard that term used in a while, specifically in regards to lupus. I think that might even be the first time I've heard that term used in relation to lupus. But even though I haven't heard that term being applied, I've seen what it looks like. Can we talk a little bit about what that looks like for you as far as crisis? First of all, is that something that you're still challenged with or threatened by today? Is that something that you still battle with in terms of going into crisis mode?
No, I haven't been in crisis mode for years. Crisis mode is when I believe when your inflammation levels are out of whack, they're just not in control. And you have, well, for me, when my body had a lot of inflammation and I had really severe joint pains and even inflammation in the feet where you can't walk, things like that. That's when I go into crisis mode. And I haven't had that for years and years. And to the point where you have to take steroids, that's crisis mode. For me, that's crisis mode, because steroids destroy the body. So anytime you have to put steroids in your body, I think that's crisis mode. For me, I call that crisis mode.
Now, I've seen what that looks like for you, and I've seen also what that looks like for Therese. And I've also had my own experiences in life where I might have experienced something that really just forced me to sit down or immobilized me. And for me, it wasn't just a physical experience, but it was also a mental and emotional experience that I had to overcome. I've watched the both of you go through this crisis mode with inflammation and different things and still have to battle with everyday life circumstances. Grace, I've seen you still go to work with your feet swollen to the point where you couldn't even put on shoes, but you still went to work where you had to be on your feet all day. Um, I've watched you raise a child, go to work every day, you know what I mean? And I've seen you have experiences where you couldn't even walk home from work, you know what I mean? You basically had to
Mhm.
crawl just to get home. What was that like for you emotionally, mentally?
For me, it was a survival mode. When I was in crisis, I just had to do whatever I had to do to come out of that crisis. And that, if that meant taking medication, following the doctor's instructions, and the main thing is decreasing the stress level. When the body says stop, you just have to stop, or slow down, you have to slow down. So you do whatever you have to do to adjust, you know.
Have you ever felt ashamed or less than as a result?
Oh yeah, definitely. As a young person, to have a debilitating disease and it wasn't well known. Like people will be like, "What's that? It's lupus." I never heard of that. I never heard of it until I got diagnosed with it. So it wasn't well known like it is now. So it wasn't, and I didn't know anybody personally, and I still really don't know anybody personally that has it. So it was nobody that you could talk to. It wasn't like having uh, arthritis or having, having a common known illness. So that was shameful to me. And then that was a shame that it wasn't a well-known disease and there was nobody that I could talk to that really had it.
Was it something
And
that
then
you?
people, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, to me, it was like a stigma attached because people, I mean, if people would think maybe, oh, it's contagious or something like that. So yeah, it was that kind of shame because I felt as though I was the only one that had it. I didn't know anybody else.
Did you feel like it was something that you had to hide?
Yeah, definitely. As far as the jobs were concerned, um, people don't really want to hire you, and they don't. If they know you're sick, they're leery about. They question whether you're going to be able to keep the job. So you hide it on the job. You don't let people know on the job you have it.
How about your friends and family? Did you feel like you had to hide it from your friends and family?
Yeah, because I did hide. I don't know. I just never talked about it. I never talked about it because I figured they wouldn't understand. Nobody would understand. They don't have it. And basically, once I got diagnosed and put on medication, it was basically under control. So it wasn't really something, as long as I was taking the medications. And then there were years when I didn't have to take the medications. So I was always able to, it was under control. So I really didn't find a need to really talk to anybody about it.
So the race, um, you've had experiences, like I said, where you've gone to work, your, your feet may have been swollen. I want to pose the same questions to you. Do you feel like, first of all, how did that affect you mentally and emotionally, and how did you overcome it?
I see LA. I want to ask her if she wanted to weigh in on something or that was already said first
Oh yeah,
because she hasn't had a
absolutely,
chance to speak yet. So
absolutely.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, well, for me, with the doctor, I had a similar situation like Crystal. I was very fortunate to find my doctor. I went from one hospital who didn't know what was wrong with me for a couple of years. And when I suggested lupus, he said I was crazy. But he finally tested me and he said, you know what, this does look like it's lupus. They sent me out to U of M in Michigan and I got with the lupus clinic and I've had an amazing experience ever since then. I was diagnosed in 2008. And ever since I got with the doctors in the lupus clinic, I feel like they've been honest with me. They do respect what I feel, whether I want to try medication or not, within, reason based on how my health is going. The industry itself, I don't know what they're up to. The industry is the industry. It's about money, and I get that. But I believe that my doctor is honest with me and will be more direct as far as why I should or shouldn't try something. As far as like when I was first diagnosed and going to work, I had two young children. They were probably about, I don't know, say 8 and 15 or something like that. And it started attacking me in a way where you could see it. I had these lesions breaking out all over my body, my face, my neck, like when you get a burn mark and it bubbles up. Those lesions were all over my body, so I couldn't hide it. And I was vain at the time. I've grown out of that, but I was vain. So going to work and trying to hide that stuff, it was devastating. I mean, I contemplated suicide. It was that bad. I thought this stuff was about to take me out. And then the one person who I knew who had lupus, she was doing horrible. Like she had brain issues and chest issues, and it was just so bad that I was like, I don't want to deal with this. But I thought about my children and the fact that they needed me, and that's what was able to bring me back around to fight. And ever since then, I've been great. So I really don't have a lot of complaints with the treatment and everything that I get. I think I'm one of the more fortunate people to have lupus. Even when I talk with Sissy, with Teresa a lot, she's usually experiencing more things than I am, you know, more things that are kind of concerning. So I think I've been pretty fortunate with my doctors and my care.
Okay. The question, I think you were asking me the same question you asked Crystal. I don't know if I felt like it was a general stigma attached to it, but for me, like she said, I was in my 20s, early to mid 20s when I got diagnosed. So I didn't want a lot of people to know, only because in my life at the time, I was really trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. Like I didn't want people looking at me a certain way or treating me a certain way. Treat me like, you know, I couldn't do anything that somebody else could do. Like I didn't want to lose that. So I think that's the reason why I was very guarded with my personal business as far as telling people about lupus at that time. And I also felt like, as you said, like I would stuff my swollen feet into my shoes and still go to work with my legs and my feet hurting and swollen, and I would have to keep taking breaks and like going into the bathroom because I was working in retail at one period. So I would have to keep just hiding out in the bathroom. They had a bench in there. I would go in there and sit on the bench and cry and like put my feet up on the thing because they were so swollen. I just couldn't walk around anymore. It was really bad. But I had, in my mind, I was just like, I have to keep going. I can't sit at home and say, oh, I'm not going to go to work today because I don't feel well. There was something inside me that was driving me. Like, I just didn't want people to look at me like, you know, I have a certain kind of pity, or I didn't want to carry that shame. So I felt like I still had to get up and be a productive member of society, even though I was feeling like shit, excuse me. But that's how I felt at the time. You know, now looking back on it, I look at myself and I'm like, that was crazy to think like that or to feel like that. But that's how I felt at the time. Hmm.
What we didn't get a chance to do yet, just for those that aren't familiar. Can we give a definition of what lupus is?
So, oh, you can go,
Go,
Crystal.
Luke. Go ahead, Therese.
Okay, so
Add it.
what they say the definition is your immune system is basically attacking itself. Your immune system is attacking healthy cells and tissues within your body. And that could be cells or tissues within any type of organ in your body, meaning your skin, your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, you know, just any major organs in your body. This disease can attack the healthy tissue and just send your whole body, like Crystal said, into a crisis mode. So I mean, that's the basic definition of it. And where I get confused, and I'm still like on a quest to figure this thing out, is why that happens and, you know, where it comes from. Because that, like I said before, that's the thing that really doesn't sit right with me. I've never gotten a straight answer from a doctor when I ask, well, why is this happening or where does it come from? Some people try to tell me, oh, maybe it's genetic. Maybe you have people in your family that have it. And as far as I know, I don't. So I just kind of get stuck on that, you
You
know, why it's happening.
Do you think the stress and the anxiety that we've been subjected to growing up in the Black community, specifically in the crack era and things of that nature, do you think that contributes to our state of health, specifically in regards to your lupus condition?
I mean, maybe. I think stress is a big contributor for sure. Um, any kind of stress in your life, you know, whether certain situations or certain instances contributed to this condition, I can't say for sure. But yeah, stress is a big factor in this, I believe, because I know with myself, I could do a lot of things and put a lot of pressure on myself and just feel myself, you know, building up with all this anxiety and stress. And in the moment, I'm like, okay, I can handle this. It's okay. But then maybe a month later, I realized that that stress that I was having back then has now manifested itself into this lupus flare that I'm having right now.
Okay, so that answers my question. Not just in the past, but even present day stress affecting
Mm-hmm.
your condition. Lakeisha, can you speak to that? Stress, you think stress plays a part in the coming into fruition of this particular illness?
I believe stress exacerbates the issue. I don't believe that stress causes the issue. Lupus is very mysterious. Like they say that it's more prevalent amongst Black and brown people. And then there's some diseases that are more prevalent amongst white or European or, you know, different people. So I think that this is just a very mysterious disease that attacks predominantly people of color. And I don't think too far past, like, why can't the doctor tell me what it is? I would be more upset if you told me it was something that it wasn't. I would prefer you say, this is just really mysterious. We don't really understand what can cause your immune system to trigger and to attack itself, you know, where you would need to turn it down a little bit. But it happens so much in Black people. And yes, when you're stressed out, I mean, that's going to make your blood pressure rise. That will exacerbate any illness. Stress will. That in and of itself is a killer. So, but I don't believe that stress added to me contracting it, because I wasn't stressed out when I got it. I was going through a really great time in my life. Had just gotten a new job and had, you know, I was just really doing well. Had gotten a new apartment. I really felt like I was coming into myself when this hit me and knocked me down. Like, whoa, you just, you know, achieved all of this. I think I had one more year to graduate with my bachelor's degree. So I was happy. There was no stress in my life. So I believe that stress exacerbates it, but I don't think it causes it. And I mean, there's so much, guys, that happens inside of this body. You know, you think about the mechanics of this body and how it operates. And I don't think anybody understands it fully. And there's more diseases going on in our bodies that they just haven't discovered yet. So I really try not to do the research. I try to understand lupus as much as I can, the signs, the symptoms, and how to keep it at bay. But as far as wondering where it comes from, it's people all over the world, so you can't blame it on specific climates. You can't. I've never had anybody in my family who had it, so I can't blame it on genetics. Although my mother did have an autoimmune disease called pemphigus, which was very rare. You probably never heard of it or know anyone who has it. It was called pemphigus. And it was an autoimmune disease that attacked her from the inside, and it put scars all over her
Mm.
body. Looked like she had black eyes, looked like she'd been cut, it looked like she'd been scratched. And like people would look at her like, oh my gosh, do you need the domestic hotline, for violence, domestic violence? And she would be like, no, it's a disease. And it was her doctor who actually discovered that I had lupus. So nobody still knows where pemphigus comes from. They make you look like you got your ass kicked all day, but it existed. So I think there's just so many of these mysterious things that our body can either contract or can resort into doing. And we just gotta, find out how to keep ourselves as healthy as we can and to detract and distract these things from entering. Because I think if we do practice healthy lifestyle, keeping the stress down, eating well, meditating, then you can kind of, shoo off some of this stuff. But when you're most vulnerable is when you're eating unhealthy or when you're smoking and drinking and you're stressing. So I control the things that I can control, and the rest, I'll leave that to the scientists to figure out.
Ms. Crystal, you use the term
Speaking of
survival.
that,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, no, I was gonna say, speaking of that, that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask everybody. Like if you are doing things in your life personally, what are some of the things that you're doing that you find that are helpful to contribute to your healing and your well-being? Anybody?
Oh, yes. For years, I would say at least 7 years now, maybe 7 to 10 years, I haven't had to take any steroid medication. And I think for me, myself, just individually, just for myself, that my disease, some of the contributors were things that happened in my past, because the disease is your body fighting against itself. So in my childhood, I had a lot of traumatic experiences. So I think that contributed to it. Certain people on my mother's side of the family had autoimmune diseases that affected their joints. So in my case, I think some of it was hereditary. So for me, environmentally, well, as far as nutritionally, now that I'm eating like anti-inflammatory foods, like a lot of green vegetables and things like and fruits and vegetables, and cut out the meat, I think I haven't had to take Plaquenil. That's an anti-inflammatory drug that I've taken for years. So I'm not taking that. The only thing I'm taking is small dosage medication for hypertension. So I think nutritionally, change your diet, get exercise, emotionally, cut the drama, as much drama out of your life. I think forgiveness is a big contributor to your healing, letting things go, letting people off the hook from doing things to you, in your past. I think all that contributes to your healing. And spiritually, I always knew that God was my healer. I never put my trust in medication and doctors. I knew that he's the healer. So my faith, I think that helped a lot.
LA?
Well, When you were living in Detroit, you knew that I was not the healthiest. I've always been thin, so I've always eaten whatever I wanted to eat. Drink a couple bottles of wine. I used to smoke. I did stop smoking cigarettes, but I didn't follow the lupus guidelines to how you should live if you have lupus. I said, once I got up off that couch and said, I'm not going to commit suicide, I'm going to fight this. I said, God, you didn't bring me this far to just kill me and let all this be in vain. So we still have work to do, and maybe this is a part of my story. So when I claimed victory over it, and I did change, I did start eating more, leafy greens and things like that, a few less fried foods. I bought an air fryer. So I changed a little bit, but I can't say I changed dramatically with my wine consumption or the way that I eat. I claimed victory over this disease, period. God brought me here to do work. And when that work is finished, I will leave here. I will not go any sooner, and I will not stay any longer than I'm supposed to. So as long as I am doing my job, which is whatever he sent me here to do, speaking words to whomever, traveling to whomever, writing my songs, politicking when I get on that, when I am focused on that, I'm not focused on lupus. I'm just not. I don't feel it. Sometimes I can go a month and forget that I even have lupus. And I'll be like, oh wait, I should probably take a Plaquenil. But I don't take mine every day. I mean, I'm up, I'm moving, I'm mobile, I'm working. And I talk to God every night, to heal this body, keep these knees moving, keep these joints, able. And it has worked. That's the only thing. I am not a big meditator or anything like that. Mine is just me and God. That's all I got. And we just go back and forth. But what do you want me to do? Show me, send me the vision. I'm just a very, very, not religious, but a very spiritual person. And I said, this body is yours. You brought it here, so do what you're going to do with it, period. And I mean, I just can't say enough how I've just been blessed to travel and move the way that I move and get the things achieved that I've achieved, having lupus, having this disease that is debilitating to so many people. So either, and my when I was first diagnosed, it was so bad. I was about to be put on the list for a kidney transplant. I was on about 13 different medications. So I can't say that it was never that bad. It was bad. And I went from 12 medications to just one, the Plaquenil, if I want to take that, and nothing else. I mean, I don't even see my kidney doctor anymore. I haven't seen that kidney doctor in probably 10 years. So, and mine was just God. I said, God, if you want me to be here, then you keep me healthy to do what I need to do. And even if sometimes, like, say you did become immobile or you lost a limb, you had to get it cut off or whatever, maybe that's going to be a part of your story, or how that story goes. For whatever reason, I just feel like whatever happens is how my story is supposed to go. And right now my story is healthy, vibrant. I'm out here, so I'm thankful for that.
Grace, you have a very interesting story, a very powerful story about your hair. You care to share that story in regards to your hair and how lupus affected your hair journey?
Yeah, so when I first got diagnosed, I think lupus was just running rampant in my body. So it was just going through the different systems affecting everything. So initially, I had issues with my joint, then it was my heart, then it was my lungs. And after that, it was my skin, which included my scalp. Um, my scalp started getting these like blisters. It became very painful and itchy. So I was always like itching my scalp. And back then I had a relaxer in my hair. So it came to the point where I had to stop putting this relaxer in my hair because I had these things all over my scalp that if I tried to put anything in it, it would burn the hell out of my scalp. So as it went along, it progressed and it got really bad to the point where my hair started falling out in patches. And then a lot of it fell out at one point, and so I tried to start covering it up with, you know, little fake like hair pieces or whatever. And then the last straw, it was holiday season, I think, and I tried to go to like the African braiding spot. I don't know why I did this looking back at it. I just figured like if I got my hair all braided up, maybe I would have to touch it less or do it less or whatever. To me, in my mind, it made sense at the time. But when they braided it was so much like weight on my scalp. It was very bad. And I feel like the braids just made the itching more intense. So the braids lasted maybe like a week, which Black women, you know, when you get your hair braided, a lot of times you leave it in for like 2 months, 2, 3 months. Your hair be hanging off that little root right here. But I
Mhm.
couldn't take it. I had to take those braids out. It was that bad. My scalp was itching so bad. So as I'm taking the braids out, it's like clumps of my hair falling out. And I'm just, as I'm taking the braids out, my hair's coming out. I'm crying. By the end of me taking all the braids out, I went to get in the shower, um, and I'm washing it because the itch is so bad. As I'm washing it, it's still coming out, you know, between my fingers. And I just stood in the shower and I cried and cried and cried until the water turned cold, and I was still standing there just because, like LA said earlier, I'm in my like mid-20s, so that was a very vain period of my life. Um, and for me, for my hair to fall out at that time, to me, like the world had came to an end. I was just like, what am I supposed to do now? I'm bald headed. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know what to do. Um, so I called my mom and my cousin at the time. And my mom, she really did a good job of comforting me. Like she said, it's okay. We can go to a wig store, you know, we can pick out something. And I picked out a wig that I thought looked okay. I wore it to work one day and I just couldn't wear it anymore. It felt so unnatural for me having a wig on my head. I said, I can't do this. So I wore it one day. After that, I never wore it again. And I just got like Crystal was wearing, I got some material and decided I was just gonna wear head wrap. So I did that for months and months. In the meantime, I was visiting a dermatologist. Um, the last time I visited her, I asked her, you know, do you think that my hair will ever grow back? She looked at my scalp and said no. It was a real flat no. She didn't have any compassion, any emotion behind it. She just said nope.
Oh.
And I was like, okay. That was another point. After I left her office, I went in my car. I just cried and cried and cried. I sat in that parking lot for hours and I was just crying. Um, but obviously, she didn't know everything because
Sure didn't. You're definitely
my
wrong.
hair is back. One day I just felt, you know how you shave and when it's growing back, you feel the little stubble coming back. I felt that
Mhm.
on my scalp.
Good.
When I saw that little stubble coming back, that was like the most exciting time for me. I was like, I think my hair's gonna grow back. And eventually it started coming in. And here it is today. This is what I
Awesome.
have.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome story.
Have has anyone else had any stories similar to that one?
Well, in my case, the sides of my hair, they they've come out years ago, but I don't believe they haven't grown back for years and years and years. And one doctor that I talked to, he said, I see a lot of lupus patients with the same condition. So, and there was a time when I went into crisis some years ago where I got lesions on my scalp, and the hair won't grow where the lesions were. And I did go to a dermatologist, and she suggested that she put steroid shots in my scalp. So I said to her, if you're going to put steroid shots, shoot me up with steroids in my scalp, won't they go to my brain? And she never answered me. She looked at me with a smirk, a sarcastic smirk, and never answered me. So I told her, no, you can't do that. And that was it. I walked out her office and never saw her again. And eventually through prayer and they went away.
What would you guys say to someone that may have been recently diagnosed that might be dealing with these similar issues? What would your advice be? Lakeisha, we can start
First
with
thing
you.
I would say, the first thing I would say is to find a support group. I went to a support group early on. That's how I actually met Therese, and that helped a lot. Find yourself a support group. There's a lot of local chapters or even ones that you can join. It's during COVID, so join virtually. Having somebody to talk to who understands matters. Keep a positive attitude, because whatever you put up here, that's what's going to exude in your universe. That's what your body's going to listen to, and that's what's going to start to play out in your health. So you have to understand how to say the saying goes, you have lupus, lupus doesn't have you. So you have to have that mentality, and you'll go through that period when you're first diagnosed with feeling the grief and the why me and the, oh my gosh, what is this? But once you get past that, first of all, you have to will yourself past that, get your support group, and then just decide to take charge of it. If you can take charge of your body, maintaining your stress, the way that you eat, exercise, and staying healthy, you can live a long, healthy, normal life with lupus. Lupus is not a death sentence. It's not. You can. And what I wanted to ask, and maybe we can go after this question, but I wanted to talk about the different kinds of lupus, because when you get a lupus diagnosis, you often get 10 other diagnoses. And that's what can be really, really scary and overwhelming. Lupus itself, SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, that's the primary base, but that comes along with so many different other diagnoses. For example, for mine, I have bullous lupus, which is the skin lesions that pop up over my skin. I have lupus nephritis, which is my kidneys. And then I can't think of the name of it, but it's something where my fingers turn purple if I touch anything cold.
Raynaud's.
Yes, that Raynaud's phenomenon, whatever. I have that. So you get all these little diagnoses of things, and they're like, yeah, a lot of lupus patients have that. I think I got about 5 different things, but it's all treatable and it's livable. You can live with it. I'm out here right now in Michigan. It's freezing, and I got in my car, warm my hands up, and the purple will go away. So just don't feel overwhelmed with it, because it's a lot to take in the beginning. And I was wondering what all diagnoses you guys were given. Like I said, I got about 4 or 5. So
Well, so like I said earlier, in the beginning, this lupus ran through, I feel like, everything for me. I had pericarditis, which is there's a little sac like around your heart, and pericarditis is when, well, it's more like a lining. That lining gets inflamed, and it kind of like makes it like pressure on your heart, I guess. So in the beginning, that was one of my main symptoms. I felt like I was having a heart attack. That's what led me to rush to the ER. And That's how I got diagnosed, actually. So there was that. And then I had issues with my lungs, which I still think I have like scar tissue on my lungs, but my lungs were inflamed. And then I had the skin issues, which fortunately I feel really fortunate because I had the skin issues like the one time with my skin and my scalp. And after that, I haven't really had any issues with that. So I feel really fortunate in that area. But then after that, you know, the kidney issues developed, which I am still dealing with today. And now I think that's the most prominent thing that I deal with. Like sometimes every now and then I'll have some joint ache or whatever. I might have lung issues, but nothing is as bad as the nephritis, which is, you know, the most severe thing that I'm dealing with right now. Right now, the last time I went, my kidney function was at a 19%. And that was like a couple weeks ago. So the doctor is back to talking about dialysis again. She's back to talking about transplant list. But like LA was saying a moment ago, I'm really at this point, I'm really just trying to live every day, just like one day at a time. I'm trying to get the most out of my days. I'm trying to do things that make me feel fulfilled in my life. Um, I just try not to think about, you know, the negative things that are happening around me because there's, like I was telling Terry this earlier, there's so much that I still want to do. Even with this disease, there's so much that I still want to accomplish in my career, in my personal life. I want to start an organization to help people who newly get diagnosed with this disease because I felt like when I got diagnosed, I was on the internet like all day, all night trying to search for things because nobody really had answers. So I want to start an organization that helps people as far as resources, as far as support, whatever I can do to help people. I don't want people to feel like I felt coming into this diagnosis. So that's one of the things that I want to accomplish.
What would you say to someone that's just coming into this diagnosis? What would you say to them? Same question that was posed to LA.
I would say to don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like when people who don't understand your disease are going to make comments to you, they're going to make you feel a certain way. You know, the lazy term has been thrown around. When I first got diagnosed, so just don't put too much pressure on yourself to feel like, you know, you can't take a rest or that you have to work harder to keep going about your everyday life. Like you have a condition, you have a disease. So like me and Crystal were having that conversation at her house. Like if you don't take time to rest mentally and physically, your body is going to knock you down and it's going to make you rest. And that's something that I really had to learn the hard way. So I would say that to somebody. Don't feel guilty about taking time to rest. And that's something that I still struggle with. Take rest, take a mental vacation. Just do what you need to do. Don't don't listen to people that might be in your ear. You know, if you have to cancel engagements with friends, business, whatever it is, you have to do what you have to do for your health. You have to be your own health advocate because nobody is going to do the job like you will. So that would be my advice to someone.
Ms. Crystal, you want to address LA's question in regards to your diagnosis?
What question was it?
What other diagnosis, if any, did they hit you with when they found lupus?
Actually, years ago when I got it, I don't think they knew much about it. Not that they know so much now, but they didn't know as much as they know now. So basically, they just told me I had lupus. They didn't tell me what parts of the body it was going to affect, how it was going to affect me. They just told me I had lupus and there was no cure. So it was up to me to find out a little bit more about it. But basically, it's affected my joints. Basically, my joints, and I did have one crisis where it affected my scalp. So, but really, my joints. And also, my fingertips turn blue. They're actually blue right now, but whenever I'm cold, but it never, I mean, they just turn blue. That's it. And that's it. That's all I've had problems with since I've been diagnosed.
What would you say to someone that is newly diagnosed that may be going through these same issues?
What I would say is to take your care into your hands. Don't put your trust in the doctors, all your trust in the doctors. They do serve a purpose. When you're in crisis mode, you do have to take the medication to come out of crisis mode. Also, when they tell you you have to be on medication for a lifetime, I don't believe that. I've had some family members that were on prednisone for most of their life, and I saw how it affected them, and they eventually wound up dying from the medication, effects of the medication, and not the disease. So when they put you on medication, I've never believed that I would have to stay on that same medication and that same dosage. You know, I've always, when my body was under control, I was thinking about getting off the medication or weaning myself off of the medication. And I would ask my doctor, how do I wean myself off of the medication? So it's like, you have to listen to your body. You have to, and I never believed that I would have to take medication forever. I mean, I may have to take it when I'm in crisis mode until my body is back in order. And I always believed that God was my healer. I don't put my trust in man when it comes to my healing. And I know that there are some things that I have to do. I have to eat right, live right, and pray right.
LA, are eating habits important to you in regards to keeping your condition stable? So, how important and why?
You said for me,
Yes.
they have not been, to be honest. Like I said, I've always been really, really thin. I'm probably like 130 pounds. So I've always tried to eat more to get a little bit of thighs and a little bit of booty. And it didn't, a couple of foods they told me to avoid, like I think it was sprouts, I think it was tomatoes for some reason. Very, very long ago, when I first got diagnosed, they gave me a couple of foods to avoid. But other than that, my blood pressure was normal. I was a little bit younger. What really prompted me to start eating better is when I hit 40. I think it was more so that than the lupus. It was just because my mom died at an early age. She had hypertension, and I didn't want to just, you know, even though I'm still 130 pounds, I know that this body is 40 something and it needs a certain type of diet. But I can't say that lupus prompted me to change because, I mean, I was feeling fine. I stopped with all the fried foods because I don't want to clog my arteries, not necessarily because it makes me feel any better or I don't feel any worse when I eat that stuff, if that makes sense. It doesn't, even the tomatoes. I eat tomatoes on everything and they don't bother me. They don't flare up my lupus or anything. I've said it for about 5 years that I'm cured. I just told myself I'm cured, I'm cured, I'm cured. And I might be because I none of the things that should bother me bothers me. except for the sun. Being in the sun does make me sleepy. It makes me very fatigued. But all the foods and the dieting, I changed it because, like I said, I reached a certain age, but not because it was affecting me, my lupus.
The race, how important are eating habits to you in regards to your condition?
Um, they are important. I feel like I cut out certain things so that I can cut down on the inflammation as far as like dairy. Now I'm cutting back severely on sugar. Um, but yeah, I feel like when I used to eat dairy, it used to cause this like I know I have post nasal drip. So whenever I ate dairy, I could notice that it was way more intense. And I always felt like this thickened, like phlegm or whatever in my body and my throat and everything. I know that's gross, but that's part of my journey. That's just yeah, that's one of the things that I cut back. I stopped eating meat years ago, and honestly, I don't know. I don't know if the no meat thing helps me or not. It was just kind of like a personal decision that I made years ago. I eat fish like every now and then, but no turkey, chicken, beef, or anything like that. Um, I know the no dairy helps me for sure, but the meat, I don't know if that helps or not.
How about
It's
cutting
just
back
like a
on,
personal choice.
about you said cutting back on sugars and starches? Do you think that helps you in any way?
Well, the sugar and starch thing, I've just recently started. So I haven't been able to gauge that yet. I'm not really sure if that's making a difference or not. Again, it's more kind of like a personal choice because I really had an addiction to sugar and sweets, like anything like cake, pies, cookies, or anything like that. So, I just had to come to a point where I'm like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. I really need to cut back on this. Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes I look back on it, like when I read about people who have lupus that have died from kidney involvement, and some of these people are young, like way younger than me. But I read a lot of cases like that, and I'm like, maybe the diet does play a part. Because when I read about somebody that's 25, 26 years old that passed away because they had kidney involvement with lupus, it's like, I'm like, man, I've had this has been going on for a long time. You know what I mean? So I wonder, like, sometimes if the diet does play a part. I can't say for sure, but maybe it does. I'm sticking to it though. So
Like, how did you wean yourself off of your medication, specifically with kidney issues?
I just, I went the homeopathic way first, and that didn't work. That was a really bad mistake. And I tried this early on when I was first diagnosed, so things were pretty bad. I was on like the 12, 13 pills, and I felt like that was harming my body, taking so many pills that I had to process every day. So I tried all these homeopathic things, and I got deathly ill. I was like, give me a pill. It was bad. So I never would recommend just stopping your medication cold turkey. You have to get your body to a level where it can sustain like on its own, not in the middle of a crisis, definitely. But once you're through that crisis, you're through that flare, you can start to take, one pill a day instead of two, then a half a pill instead of a whole, and just see how your body does. And if it does well, then you keep going. If it doesn't, then you go back. So for me, it was kind of like just tested. I just tested the waters to see if I could get through the day without being fatigued or without being achy in my joints, and it would work. I would get up, I would pray, I would do some stretches, kind of talk to this body, get it moving, take, warm showers and whatever I needed to do. And then you just got to taper yourself off. I don't think there's a method where you can just come off all of them at the same time. That's not going to happen. But you can kind of taper yourself down. Just go from 2 pills to 1 to a half, and replace that with something else, like be it like I'm drinking a shake right now. So I might do a fiber shake or whatever it is you're low on. I'll do a vitamin shake every day instead of a certain pill. And it just began to, I don't know, my body began to respond to the more natural ways of keeping it healthy as opposed to the pills.
But is there anyone here that has any experience with using herbs to overcome or to curb your crisis experiences? Any herbal remedies?
Well, well, when I drink smoothies, I put turmeric, the herb turmeric in the smoothies. Is supposed to be good for a good anti-inflammatory herb. So I noticed that helps me a lot. Like I said, I don't even take the Plaquenil now. So I think herbs do play a part, but I know when you're on medications and you try to take herbs, they can counteract each other. So you have to be careful with that. But if you're not on medications, I think herbs are very good.
How about you, Therese?
So I'm actually, sometimes I do this herbal tea that I have that is a mix of like 4 or 5 different herbs. I can't think of the name of it right now. But I have seen my kidney levels increase after consistently drinking this herbal tea. I've seen that happen at one point. Lately that hasn't been happening though, so I don't know if I just need to get back to drinking the tea every day, be consistent with it at a certain time of day. But yeah, that was something that I was doing. And I was also taking herbal supplements. I take a vitamin mix, like a powder mix that the doctor recommended for me. And then I take all of my, whatever pills the medications they gave me. So sometimes I just get overwhelmed by all of that and I feel like it's a lot. And I think that's why I'm not as consistent with all the herbs and stuff, because I get in my head and I'm like, this is too much. I shouldn't be taking all of this stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, to answer your question, I was drinking a herbal tea and I was doing some herbal supplements to try to help me. But like, everybody said before, I'm not advocating for that or encouraging it. I think you should be in communication with your doctor as far as adding or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so.
What is the most amount of pills that you've had to take in a day?
Mine was 13.
13 pills in a day?
Mm-hmm.
And that was every day?
Every day.
Wow.
I would say I probably had that amount at some point. It might be close to that now for me, because some of the pills you take 2 of them like twice a day or something like that. So yeah, I would probably say it's close to that now for me. I still take like the Cellcept. Sometimes I still take the Plaquenil. I take like 3, 4 different pills just to control my blood pressure. Um, I take a pill because they told me that my blood was too acidic. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, I think that's about it. But some of those pills are I take more than one, and you do it twice a day. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
How about you, Miss Crystal? What's the most amount of pills you had to take in a day?
Throughout the years, I had to take Plaquenil, prednisone, and ibuprofen and aspirin. So I would say 4 pills is the most that I've taken at one time.
I'm noticing it's something that I'm observing here. Your diagnosis came. How long has it been since you were first diagnosed, Miss Crystal?
Oh my gosh, I was in my 20s and now I'm 60. So I would say 40 years ago.
Because when I hear you speak, huh?
Mhm.
When I when
Go
I
ahead.
hear when I hear you speak, your experience sounds a little bit different, like than how some of the experiences that pertain to today line up in regards to doctors and medications and the interpretation of the illness and things of that nature. It seemed like um, things are a lot more intense now as far as more medications being prescribed, more talk about the illness. I noticed that
Hmm.
you didn't have a whole lot in terms of different types of diagnosis. It was just lupus. Where
Right.
where where when I listen to Therese and Lakeisha, their experience is in terms of the doctor is more intense, more involved, more things going on. Lakeisha, how long has it been since you were first diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in December 2008. So that's what, about 13 years?
Hmm. And you, Therese?
2000. I say May 2005.
2005. About 15 years. We're looking at an average of 15 years versus an average of about 40 years, right? What do you
Mm.
guys think about the difference in your experiences in relation to someone that was diagnosed 40 years ago in terms of there wasn't a whole lot of medications, there wasn't a lot of talk. I mean, there's obviously a big question mark now in regards to a lot of things, but it seems like 40 years ago, when I hear your story, Miss Crystal, it was more just like you just got to figure this thing out, and you made it to this point. So, what do you guys think about your experiences
Mm-hmm.
versus your experiences in terms of being diagnosed for the past 15 years versus somebody that was diagnosed 40 years ago? You see any
Well, I
observations there?
think
I feel like they should have known more. By the time Therese and I was diagnosed in 2005 and 2008, I feel like they should have known more than what they did, because we pretty much got the deer in the headlights stare when we got our diagnosis. Like, they couldn't tell us much about it, and that's pretty ironic that with all these diagnoses, which I would have to look and see how many people had been diagnosed prior to that. But if you say somebody was diagnosed 40 years ago, the best you can tell me is you still don't know where it comes from. You still don't know why. Some of the doctors, at least at the first hospital that I went to, I feel like they were unprepared to deal with lupus. It wasn't again until I went to U of M and they had an actual lupus clinic that I could tell that they actually, by having a clinic, showed that they were dedicated to researching this disease and to being able to provide, better care and more answers. So I think some hospitals and or doctors still need to catch up with lupus so that the experience can be a little bit better for the people that comes behind us with this diagnosis. There's a lot of information out there, and for some reason, I just don't think a lot of hospitals or doctors choose to focus on lupus. Maybe because it's a primarily minority disease. I don't know. but I won't name the hospital. But the first one I went to, it was like lupus was. It wasn't something that they were willing to teach me, coach me through, or anything. So, and with all the research, I feel like they should have been able to.
I agree with that. By the way, I also, when I was in Michigan, was being treated at U of M, the lupus clinic, and I had a very good doctor there. I can't remember her name, rheumatologist, but she was very good. That's a side note. But anyway, yeah, I would have to agree with LA. I think that's what I was saying earlier. By this point, it should be a better answer to that question, like where does this come from? And that's why I was saying earlier, there's something about that just doesn't sit right with me. That's why I answered that question about the medical industry being honest. I answered it as no, I don't think they're being honest. Because a part of me thinks that they at least have different theories as to why they think it might be happening, but they just choose not to share those. And then as far as her treatment and the treatment that we were given, I think as the years went along, it's kind of just like a sign of the times. Like as the years go along, that's kind of what the medical industry has become. My mom used to say when she went to my appointments with me, every time she went, she would get annoyed by the doctor tearing off a piece of her prescription pad and giving me another medication. She just used to tell me like that sound of her ripping the paper off of the pad to give you another pill to take, it just really annoyed her. And I think, as the comparison, that's kind of like a sign of the time. As the years go on, the medical industry cares less and less about really healing and treating people and just more about making money, and they care more about being in bed with the pharmaceutical companies. And it's like you go there and all they want to do is look at your levels and say, oh, okay, yeah, let me give you this for that. And then you leave the office and make an appointment for a month or 6 months or whatever the case is, and you come back and do the same thing all over again. So I don't know. I think it's frustrating when I think about that, and that you brought it up. The comparison is glaring. You know what I mean? Because she said she took 4 pills, up to 4 pills a day. The aspirin and the ibuprofen probably was as needed. I would assume, but up to 4 pills a day, where we're over here taking 13. You know what I mean? So the comparison is glaring. And I agree with LA when she said, I think, they really have to get up to speed on this disease and start coming up with better treatments for people. That's something that I'm really passionate about.
How much does race play a part in lupus, specifically in regards to how the doctors respond to you?
For me, the first hospital is probably why they didn't find my lupus, because I would go in, young girl in my 20s, hair laid down to the side, saying that I don't feel well, and they were like, "This black girl's I feel like they looked at me like this black girl's just a hypochondriac. There's nothing wrong with her. She probably just needs a doctor's note to get out of work." And they kept dismissing my claims to be all in my head. But maybe if I were a different race and I walked in there, maybe they would have did full blood panel lookup and tried to find out what's really going on with me. But I do feel like they dismissed me. Was it because of race? I don't know. I will say that when it finally turned out that I did have lupus, I told that doctor, the kidney doctor, that he was wrong for the last year. And now my kidneys were about to fail completely because he missed it. I actually started to cry, and he said, "Listen, I'm just a doctor. I don't know everything. I'm trying to look for the common thing that it could be." And he said, "Seeing you walk in this office, a young, healthy Black female, I did not think that your kidneys were on the verge of crashing." And he's like, "You come in with a sniffle, I'm trained to think that it's probably a cold." And I said, "I get that, but maybe you need to not think that way anymore." And I ended up leaving and going over to U of M. But at U of M, I don't feel like race has played a part at all. I don't feel like I've been treated any differently. Again, I can't say enough good things about them. I haven't had a bad experience with not one doctor, and I see a whole group of them just once a year now, just for maintenance, and they're all just amazing to me. I don't feel like they treat me any differently or dismiss any of my claims as crazy or frivolous because of my race. So I feel like I'm getting the best level of care that they would give to any of their patients.
Grace, you want to touch on that one?
I feel like in some way race probably has played a part. I mean, I can't pinpoint it, but I think when I feel like people were being dismissive towards me, I felt like it was more because they didn't know, or they claimed to not know a whole lot about the disease. So I feel like in those cases where, I felt like the doctors were brushing me off or being dismissive, at the time, I felt like that was the reason, because they didn't know a whole lot about it and they weren't really sure of what to do about it. Like I was saying earlier, they give you a pill and send you home. That's what my experience is like. Anytime I go to the ER, it's like, they're trying to stabilize me, get the swelling down or whatever the case is, and send me home. They don't have a whole lot of answers or comments or whatever. It's like they're trying to keep me from dying in that moment, and okay, now you can go home.
They
So
just don't want you to die on their watch, and then they boot you out, basically.
I guess, yeah. I guess so.
What about
Basically, I don't think they have the answers. They don't know what causes this disease. I really believe they don't know what causes the disease, and also their job is to treat the symptoms. That's always been their job, to treat the symptoms. They don't even have a nutritional prerequisite to become a doctor. They don't have to take nutritional classes. They don't even study how nutrition affects the body and diseases. So they don't know. So all they're going to do is treat the symptoms, take you out of crisis, try to keep you out of crisis mode or get you out of crisis mode. And I think that's what they do. So the rest is up to us, I believe.
So the word lupus comes from the Latin word wolf, and the word was coined by a physician who, based on the lesions that B.L.A. described, based on the lesions, it supposedly this doctor coined the term lupus because those lesions were reminiscent of a wolf bite. So that's just a little information. I don't know, if we already knew that, but I just wanted to put that out there for viewers.
Good. Yeah.
And also, lupus is the name of the wolf in Latin culture or Greek culture, where Romulus and Remus sucked on the belly of the wolf to survive. It basically tells the story of Caucasians in the Caucasus Mountains feeding off drinking uh, off the belly of the wolf, the rest of the wolf to survive. This is a story, if you study Greek culture, you'll find the story of Romulus and Remus, and the wolf that saved their life was Lupus. So in Greek culture, the wolf is looked at, like a deity, so to speak, according to these type of stories. This is some information that I've come across in my research. Anybody else have any other questions?
I want to ask if any of you guys are planning on getting the COVID vaccine. If you are, why or why not?
I definitely don't want to get it. Job is going to make it. I don't know if the job will make it mandatory. I don't know if it's going to be a medical dictatorship, but I don't want to do it, and I'm going to try to do everything so that I don't have to do it, because I feel as though if you get the COVID vaccine, if a whole bunch of people get the COVID vaccine, then you're protected, whether I have COVID or not. So why do I have to, as a mandatory that I get the COVID vaccine?
I saw on CNN that people with HIV and a host of autoimmune diseases, it was recommended that they not get a shot. So I actually have a video call with my doctor on Tuesday, and I'm going to ask her the question about that story. But it said that people with autoimmune diseases should not get this vaccine. Regardless, I don't want it. I just don't like taking any medication that I absolutely don't need. And if I can wear a mask and wash my hands and stay away from people and that keeps me healthy, I'd rather go that route as opposed to putting something in my arm that hasn't been thoroughly studied for me. There's always kinks, whether it's a new car, whether it's a new anything, there's always kinks that you have to work out. So I've been a trial mice for so long, don't want to be a trial on this vaccine. So no, I don't plan on getting it unless my rheumatologist says I need it to save my life. Other than that, I won't be getting it.
About you, Therese?
I don't want it. As I was talking about all the, issues that I've had in the past and the things that I'm suffering through now, I just feel like I don't need to risk it. I don't need to put anything else into my body that I'm not absolutely sure of how it's going to affect me. So that's where I stand right now. I just don't want to risk, taking something that I'm not sure how my body's going to react to it. And I have enough health issues going on. I don't need to add something else into the mix. And I work in the problem with me though is that I work in healthcare. So all of my peers, everyone else around me is talking about how they're getting this COVID vaccine. And I feel like it is kind of like almost like pressure. It's an unspoken pressure. And right now it's subtle, but I still feel like there's going to come a point where, just like the flu shot in the hospital, if you work there, they're going to be making everyone get this vaccine. And I hope it doesn't come to that. Because I really just, I don't want to take it. I've been exposed to so many patients who've had COVID at this point, and I haven't been sick yet. So I just feel like if it ain't broke,
don't fix it.
You're right.
But look, tell them you don't need it because you're taking the hydroxychloroquine that Donald Trump said was the cure. So you good.
Even though he got it.
Right. We got the hydroxychloroquine. We don't need it. Made me go without my medicine for 2 months.
So you had trouble
Oh,
getting
yeah.
your hydrochloroquine when it got popular behind the COVID situation?
Oh, it was
Yeah,
gone. It was
yeah, they,
gone. None of us was getting it.
it was all
It was
out.
gone. It was gone. You were done. Whether you had one pill or 10 left, that's all you were gonna have. And I wasn't even really taking it, but like maybe I was taking it maybe once every 3 days just to kind of keep a little bit, but I only had like 5 pills left, so I was pissed because I knew that that wasn't the panacea for COVID, and it was putting not so much myself, but people who relied on that medicine every single day,
Mhm.
sometimes twice a day. We were putting their lives in jeopardy, on a trial or a theory that turned out to be some BS. So yeah, it was immediately gone.
Wow. Any other points that you guys want to touch on or address?
Mm,
I mean, you could go on with lupus for forever. Like sometimes Therese and I would just call and we'll talk about a specific part of the lupus experience, and they can go on for hours. But I mean, the last thing I just want to say is just to anybody who has lupus or thinks that they have lupus, because there is no diagnosis, there is no test that can diagnose it. You have to have like 12 of the 20 symptoms. If you
mhm.
think you have lupus, if you're experiencing hair loss, fatigue, maybe weight loss, achy joints, and doctors can't really decide or discern what it is, definitely look into lupus. It could be, especially if you're a woman and a woman of color. But if it does turn out to be lupus, just again, don't get overwhelmed with that diagnosis. When somebody tells you you have something that there's no cure for and you have to live with it for the rest of your life, that is the most frightening thing you could hear. But it's better than hearing you have something that there's no cure for that's going to kill you. This is not something that's going to kill you. You will be fine. You will be fly. You can work. You can go to school. You can achieve everything. But it all depends on you, your support team, and your doctors. So find a good doctor, find a good support team, and you're good. Stay off the internet, as much as you can. Do a little research, but it's a lot of stuff out there that will just scare you, and it's going to cause anxiety and stress and make things worse. So get yourself a good doctor. Take care of yourself. Listen to your body. You know you best, and you'll be fine. And when Therese gets that business up and running for the support group, I'll be right there, and we will help walk young people, old people, all people through this.
I just wanted to ask the question. When you guys get these crisis situations, joint swelling up and kidney issues and skin issues, in terms of going to work, how does society respond to you? Like in terms of like things like applying for disability, taking time off. How does that? Is it a type thing where you just gotta push all that to the side? Because I heard y'all say y'all just pushed it to the side and went to work. How does the society respond to you, the government and all of that in terms of getting benefits, in terms of applying for disability? Does any of that incorporate itself into your journey, or is it just type of thing where it's just uh, pushed to the side and you just got to do what you got to do regardless? Is there any type of resources or assistance that comes with the experience?
Well, I want to
Well,
start with that one. Let me start with that one real quick, Therese, because with the HR
okay.
background, something that I learned when I got into HR that I didn't know is that your job does have to, under most circumstances, they do have to offer reasonable accommodations for you. If you have an illness or something, but you don't need to quit your job, but maybe you stand up and you need to sit down now because your joints are swollen and you can't stand up. They need to buy you a chair at the proper height ergonomically so that you can sit down and do your job. So there are clauses in human resources that a lot of people don't know to ask about where you can request a reasonable accommodation to do your job. So you don't have to miss work because sometimes it's not as serious where you need to stay in bed. Maybe again, you just can't stand up on the swollen ankles. So ask your job about providing a reasonable accommodation before you start losing time, getting a pay cut, or using all your vacation time. And then the other thing is FMLA. You can take that intermittently, so that you don't have to be out for 6 weeks at a time, but intermittently you can take an FMLA day, which doesn't pay you, but it at least protects your job. So it doesn't look like you're just raking up a bunch of absences that's going to get you fired. If you're off on an FMLA day, instead of just calling in sick, your job is protected. So, that's my HR hat coming on, but yeah, there is some protection.
For those that don't know, what does FMLA
I'm sorry,
stand for?
what were you going to say, Therese? Family Medical Leave Act. That's what you go out on when you're pregnant. You take an FMLA. Typically, if you have asthma, if you have an asthma attack, you don't have to call in sick. You can call in and apply for FMLA. Again, not paid. It's job protection. It protects your job. If you want to actually get paid, you would have to apply for STD, short-term disability, and that's where you'll get a percentage of your pay, depending on how much your company offers. So, but look into those things. Some people are ashamed to go to their HR department and ask for these resources, but they are there to help you. So, and it's not just you. It could be if you're caring for someone with lupus, you could apply for FMLA leave and be able to take off to take this person to a doctor. People are embarrassed to use or ashamed to ask about, but definitely look into FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, and
I think that's good information. But I was going to say that I had an experience when I first got diagnosed. I was working at this place, and then when I got sick, I was in the hospital for like a little over a week. And as I'm in the hospital, I'm explaining to them, look, this is what's going on. And they're like, okay, don't worry about it. But then when I got out of the hospital, they fired me. And at the time, I didn't know anything about FMLA or whatever resources I had. So I just kind of took it on the chin. I went there and picked up my last paycheck and was like, okay, you know what I mean? I thought it was messed up, but I wasn't aware of, what I could do in that situation. So I just lost my job. As far as disability, I applied for it once and I got denied. And that really just kind of discouraged me from applying for it again. I know everybody's like, well, everybody gets denied the first time and then you just do it again. But me, the type of person I am is I already have trouble going to ask somebody for something, even though disability isn't really a handout. It's, you know what I mean? I have a problem filling this application out and then waiting and, while I'm sitting at home, because they don't really want you to work either while you're trying to get that. I'm the type of person where I just feel like I'm independent. Like I have to get up and get out into the world and go to work. And even when I'm feeling my worst, I still feel like that. And I don't know if that's like pride or whatever it is. I just, to this day, I still feel discouraged as far as trying to apply for disability. Now, if my situation, drastically changes where I'm in the hospital trying to get a kidney transplant, then obviously I have to do what I have to do. But I just always felt a certain way where if I'm sick or, even if I'm physically going through things, if I'm able to get up, like I was saying earlier, my feet were swollen. I couldn't fit into any shoes, but I had to stuff my feet into the shoes and go to work to make money. I've just always felt like that. So that's why I want to create the organization, because I want to help people to understand, like LA was saying, that you do have support out here. You have resources. There are things that you can do. You don't have to feel like, oh, I have to do this because that's all I can do. I want to help people through this condition.
And what's jacked up real quick is that you can't get on disability any easier with lupus but you sure do get kicked off of a lot of stuff real quickly with lupus, because now
Mm-hmm.
lupus is listed for not being eligible for certain life insurances, um,
Mm-hmm.
certain insurances altogether that you want to get. Like, I can't just go buy $1 million policy on my head because I have lupus and it's spelled out. Like, it's something say, cancer, this, that, and that, and then it says lupus. I'm like, wow, they're calling us out like that. Like, we're not even insurable anymore. I mean, we up there with that. That's remarkable to me. So
Race, have you ever had any trouble as far as getting a job, or have you ever felt any anxiety? Have you ever been questioned a certain way in regards to, has it created any blockages for you as far as the hiring process?
did you say Terrace or LA?
But
The high,
anybody can answer.
Haven't, because my lupus has never, except for when the lesions broke out. But other than that, you've never been able to look at me and tell that I had it. So I've never really had any problems getting hired or getting the job that I wanted. I would tell people afterwards because I've always been very vocal about my experience with lupus. And then again, with the HR background, I know what you can and can't ask me. So I've never had any problems getting hired.
yeah, I don't have any problems getting hired, but once I get hired, somehow it always comes up. Okay, this is a condition that I have. And then I don't know what other people think about it, but within myself, I always get this anxiety. Like, I don't want people to like incompetent or that I won't be as good as the next person at this job because I have a health condition. So I think that makes me push myself harder because I feel like I'm always trying to prove myself in the work environment. Like, even if I'm feeling really bad, I won't take a day off because while I'm off, I don't want people talking about me like, oh yeah, well, she has this, or she called out today because of that. You know what I mean? The stigma that we were talking about earlier, I just feel like I don't want somebody looking at me like, well, she can't, she's not as good as this person over here because she has that, or we can't rely on her the same way. I have a thing about that. Like, I don't want people to view me in that way. So sometimes it makes me push myself past the point that I should be pushing myself.
Mm. So then it does come with a certain level of anxiety, I would imagine, having to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
How about
Yep.
you, Miss? How about you, Miss Crystal? Have you had any blockages or challenges in that area?
No, I've been blessed because since the initial diagnosis and they got it under control pretty quickly, I've never had to tell an employer or HR department that I had lupus. I've never really had to take, I can count on one hand how many days I had to take off because of it, because it's always been under control, thank God. So it really hasn't affected my employment.
Do you I know we already touched on it, right? But I just want to dig a little bit deeper because it's something that impacted me as a child. And if this is something that's too sensitive to talk about, don't hesitate to let me know. I touched on it before. I used to watch you as a child. I used to watch you come home from work and your joints would be swollen so bad that you would literally have to crawl down the street to get home. And I remember as a child, I didn't know why. I didn't understand lupus or what was going on. Can you talk about what that was like for you, having to experience that? Like literally having to crawl on the concrete on the block just to get home because your joints were swollen so bad?
Mm. Well, it was so much physical pain that I couldn't even deal with the emotional side of it. It was just all I had to do is figure out how to get out of this crisis. So I would have to get to a doctor really quickly and get medication to come out of the crisis. At that time, I knew I had lupus. Like I said, when I was diagnosed with lupus, they just told me I had it, but they didn't know, or they couldn't tell me what to expect. They didn't know what my symptoms was going to be because they didn't tell me what type I had. I don't even know if they knew of the different types. So I found out from trial and error and from experiencing certain crises, what type I had. So I was literally learning how it was affecting my body at that time. And once they knew how it was affecting my body, then they could treat it.
So, in
Because
other
not
words, mhm.
not until I got those symptoms did they know what type I had, or they told me what type I had. So they didn't know until I got the symptoms how to treat it.
Mm. So, in other words, what I was observing, you were in so much physical pain that didn't even get to the emotional aspect of it.
No, all I was concerned about was getting out of that pain. It was pain that I never thought I'd ever experience. So my major concern was getting it under control, finding out what was going on with my body and getting it under control.
That's pretty profound. Because as an adult, when I look back and I think about that, I have trouble wrapping my mind around, Lay talked about vanity, Therese talked about her hair. I have trouble wrapping my mind around the feeling or the embarrassment or the humiliation that one might have to go through or overcome in regards to having to crawl down the street. And I'm talking about in the city where there's people outside, people seeing you. I have trouble wrapping my mind around how profound that must have been for you. But what I'm hearing you say now, which I'm learning for the first time, that you didn't even get to that part yet. It was just the physical pain was so dominant that you didn't even get to the part about feeling any embarrassment or humiliation in regards to having to crawl on your hands and knees just to get to your home from the subway.
No, my major concern was that pain and getting out of that pain. Humiliation to me was like, that wasn't really my concern at that time. It was just getting out of that pain.
How do you feel now? What do you think now? How do you feel now when you look back on those type of experiences?
I'm just so grateful because I'm grateful that I had the doctors I had that knew that they didn't know the answer as to why I got it, knew that they didn't have the cure, and they worked along with me, and that the medication was effective. The medication is not always a guaranteed effective for people. So the minimal amount of medication was effective for me. And also I had years in my life where I didn't even have to take medication. So I'm grateful for the experience because it could have been much worse.
Have any of you had to battle with depression as a result of dealing with lupus?
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. You're gonna go through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, definitely. Fatigue, depression is part of it.
Anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a part of it. It's probably a part of any major diagnosis.
So it's safe to say that even with everything that you guys have overcome, LA, I heard you speak about suicide. With everything that you've already overcome, is that something that you still find yourself confronted by?
No, not now. Absolutely not. No, I don't feel I'm not depressed about it. I'm not suicidal. I accept it. I accept the challenge. I take it as war wounds. I take it as battle scars. I've been through some things, and other people are going through things again that are much worse. I have to remind myself of that. I mean, this is something that I can live with. there's certain things that is a true death sentence. So I'm not depressed. I'm thankful for what it isn't, you know? So no, I don't play the victim or any of that, but that comes with time. Again, it's been, 13, 14 years. So it took some time to get to that point, but that's where I am now.
How about you, Grace?
I go back and forth. I still battle with depression, and it mainly hits me during the period of a flare. During a flare or like right after a flare, because I go through, like they say, there's cycles of grief or whatever. There's cycles of having this condition. So I feel like every time I have a flare, it kind of resets. And then I go through these cycles all over again where I go through why is this happening to me? You know what I mean? I go through the thinking about my own mortality, and it's just hard dealing with the emotional aspect of it. But like we all said earlier, you have to have a good support system behind you. Otherwise, the depression is going to be a huge factor in the condition. If you have a good support system, like I have you, I have Miss Crystal now. I've had LA, for the past 13 years. I've had my mom. I have, a lot of good people in my corner that keep me from sinking into the depths of depression. So I think that's really understated, but that's a really important part of dealing with this condition. You have to have people that are emotionally supportive. Otherwise, you can really go through some really, really dark times.
Okay. How about you, Miss Crystal?
As far as support system,
As far as yes, do you still experience levels of depression in regards to your challenges with lupus?
no, I experience levels of depression when I don't get out the house and don't walk, do any physical exercise. Um, if I go a long period without doing that, I'll start feeling a level of depression. And I know what I have to do. I have to get up and move and get out.
Gotcha. So it's safe to say that you guys have overcome a great deal to get to this point. Any final thoughts before we close out?
I just want to say thank you for hosting this. This is a very important topic, one that I think is under discussed. So I appreciate this forum and the opportunity to be able to be a part of this discussion about lupus. And I hope that some people can find it useful and that we've been an inspiration to people to see. And I know I'm kind of like the rebel. Therese is the quiet, soft one, and I'm usually the one pushing it to the limit. So there's different levels of it. Everybody handles it and takes it differently. But I appreciate the conversation, and I hope that we can continue discussing this.
We should. I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think we should continue to discussing this in regards to lupus, but just in relation to women's health, period. Specifically Black women. I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's a subject matter that uh, demands a lot more discussion, at the very least. How about you, Miss Crystal?
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts?
I think discussion is a healing. I think this helps in your healing process just to talk about it, because for so many years, I never talked about it. I mean, I had a few family members ask me about lupus just this year. Or last year. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or not, but everybody in my family never asked me or talked about lupus at all. So I didn't know whether they knew. I knew I never told them I had it, but I know so now I know that some people know I have it in my family, but I never discussed it with them. So I know that healing is, I mean, discussion and transparency about lupus could be part of the healing process. So this is definitely important to talk about.
I think it's important as well. I think it's been very therapeutic for me to talk about it. But I always feel like that when I get with people who have it, because they can relate and they can understand the things that I'm going through. So I just want to say that anybody out there who might be watching this, if you're a woman of color and you're having symptoms that you think might be lupus, or if you just got diagnosed, we do have a group on Facebook. It's called In Lupus Color. So there's a group of us that, you know, we kind of formed the group to support each other. And also just look for other resources, other ways, you know, to get supportive people around you, because that's very important. That's very, very important. That's all I have.
So I think you guys did a great job. I definitely learned a lot. I mean, I've so much that I'm going to digest after this call and just ponder and meditate on and think about. So I really appreciate it because it brings me one step closer to understanding the struggles that you guys are going through. So, and hopefully it'll do the same for other people that get a chance to see this. So thank you for being brave enough to come forward and share your stories and share your experiences. Most of all, thank you for being brave enough to overcome your experiences to the point where we can even be here today and enjoy your presence. I want to express my appreciation towards you guys for your strength as Black women. I think that you don't hear that enough in this society. I don't think that you the trophies or the medals or the crowns that you deserve in relation to the strength that that you put forth in regards to overcoming the challenges that are placed in front of you. So if it hasn't already been said, or if it hasn't been said today, let me say it today. I acknowledge your strength, your power, your greatness. You're awesome. I appreciate it. And I encourage you to continue to walk in the path and in the light that you're walking in, and continue to grow and evolve. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for coming on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Talk
Bye.
soon.
Till the next time.
Bye.
Take care.